Architecture, urban and public affairs. I think I was trying to we introduce our dean? Dean Carter. Dean Carter, are you back? Dean Carter. Dean Carter. At which the school and our center are located, and she's been a great support for this chair as everyone and all the projects we've been doing. My name is Jim Murley. I have two hats now at the university. I'm Assistant Dean for External Relations for the college and Director Center for Urban and Environmental Solutions. I'm going to be moderating and participating in this practice panel. You'll note that somehow we didn't break the full 20-minute allocation, so we figure we have more important points to make in less time. And we do want to talk about where we are and where we would like to see more science and some of the issues that confront the work we're doing and we're sure are shared by you. A couple additional places you can look for information. You have a flyer I hope you picked up as you came in, the Florida Planning Toolbox. There's a good section in there on climate change tools that you can access on the website from the website address that Jack gave you. And also, Florida's Resilient Coasts is a document our center did on adaptation issues facing the state of Florida. The science of climate change has been going on for quite a bit of time, but the practice, frankly, has been sort of submerged in the background. There were a lot of reasons for that, and especially in the United States, there wasn't an active debate about some of the policy issues. But it's changed in the last couple of years, and it's certainly changed in Florida in the last couple of years. And what we thought we'd do is bring to you a panel of people who are specifically involved at the national level, although operating here in Florida, at the state level, at the regional local level, and then specifically in an applied way how the growing information is specifically can be addressed, and the issues are being raised, and the policy issues dealing with water supply, which Barry Hunter just mentioned earlier is the focus of the study we are doing at our center. We've got 4 good speakers, 5 including myself. No, 4. I can't count, it's too late. And I'm going to introduce them as they come up. The first presenter is a good friend and a professional we're very fortunate to have here in South Florida. Dan Kimball is the superintendent of Everglades and Tortugas National Parks. He's been with the Department of Interior in various capacities for a good part of his professional career, although I think he had some time at EPA. About 7 or 8 years ago, I was exactly in this position and introducing Dan. I never met him, or I didn't remember meeting him. And I looked at his resume and it said he was from Denison University, and that's where we went to school at the same time. So there's his background, and let me introduce you to Dan Kimball, who will talk about some of the issues that, from a national perspective, on climate change in practice. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Jim. A little more to that story. I was wearing my flat hat that day, and Jim was wearing his hat, as always does, and he said, I like introducing other guys with hats. So it was a great chance to meet Jim, and we've become very good friends and have worked on a lot of different things. It was a great connection. What I'd like to, really thanks for the opportunity to come and visit with you this afternoon, talk a little bit about climate change and really the perspective of a land manager. And it's really that, we kind of had a science panel and a practice panel, and I was listening before, we're kind of at that intersection between science and policy. And given the vulnerability of Everglades and Dry Tortugas National Parks to climate change, we have really been focused on this issue for a number of years, and it seems to be a factor in about everything we do, whether it's natural resource management or cultural resource management, facility management, and also it's impacting visitor experience as well. Just before I launch off with a short PowerPoint, Mr. Chair, I want to just make a couple of comments about climate change. 5 years ago, and Jim alluded to this in his introduction, 5 years ago, climate change wasn't really even in our lexicon. And to tell you how things can change, about right at the beginning of last month, the new administration posed some questions to us. And one of the questions I think I wrote down was, what will the Everglades look like in 2100? Well, of course, we thought that was a question about ecosystem restoration, about getting the water right, getting the habitat right, decompartmentalization, everything else that runs with that. And we launched off on that for a few minutes, and a hand went up and said, no, this is a question about climate change. And we weren't used to being posed that question. And it was a question of, is Everglades restoration really worth doing in a time of climate change? And it's, I think we just didn't even bother answering that. We just figured restoring the Everglades is the right thing to do. And I think we've been working on the answer that in a time of climate change it's more important than ever. It was at the bottom of one of Hal's slides to restore the Everglades. But it's a darn good question. It's a tough question. And when you're going to spend $20 billion, somebody told me the other day, $20 billion used to be a lot of money until about 6 months ago. But it's still a big chunk of change when you look at the entire budget of the Department of the Interior is $12 billion. So we're working on the answer to that question, but we've come a long ways in a short period of time in terms of the questions that we pose. So what I'd like to do this afternoon is talk about a little bit about the implications of climate change, Everglades and dry tortugas. And the previous panel did a great job of touching on a lot of things, so I'm going to kind of roar through some slides pretty quickly. But then I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing. And we're really doing things in 3 areas. One is adaptation, 2 is mitigation. And one thing we can do with Everglades National Park is we're a great platform to communicate and talk to people about this issue. I think most of you know where Everglades is. It's pretty much this giant mass here of 1.5 million acres. Dry Tortugas is out here, 70 miles offshore. There are a number of representatives here from Biscayne National Park, and they've got basically a 190,000 acre marine park. But you can get an idea of the expansiveness of Everglades. And the reason I put this up here is one of the orientation. It's the 3rd largest park in the lower 48. Only parks that are bigger are Death Valley and Yellowstone. Most of the big parks you've got to drive a long ways to. This one is right at our back door. And that creates some huge opportunities, but some challenges as well. We had Tom Brokaw on the Discovery Channel was in the park. He did and maybe some of you saw it was on the Discovery Channel in the last 2 weeks, called Global Warming, the New Challenge. They came to the park and they said, we want to see the impacts of climate change. And I said, they're pretty hard to see. Probably go out to Cape Sable and see some collapse. But we have this sign. The sign here is on our main park road, and I think this sign tells the story. We celebrate this divide between Taylor Slough and Shark River Slough. It's the divide between those 2 drainages, and the elevation is 3 feet. 60% of the park is less than 3 feet in elevation. Max elevation is 11 feet. And you can see this is the classic river grass. It's basically flat as a pancake, about a grade of about 1 inch every mile. So we are very susceptible because we're so darn flat. Out at Tortugas, switching gears there, we're about 70 miles offshore, and we have around the fort a moat wall. It's kind of our last line of protection. Got about 3 feet of freeboard out of that, maybe 4 feet. And then we have a spectacular tropical ecosystem. You heard from Marguerite a few minutes ago about the challenges we have with acidification and increases of temperature and susceptibility to coral bleaching. I wanted to just touch on these climate change projections, and I won't spend a lot of time on this because they've already been referenced this afternoon. With the IPCC and HAL's projections, these are part of the Miami-Dade Climate Change Advisory Task Force. But I did want to talk about this right here. The National Academy of Science, National Research Council, every 2 years they do an evaluation of Everglades restoration. And in the report they issued last September, they spent close to 10 pages for the first time really dealing with climate change. And their numbers are pretty close to HAL's, 1 to 2 feet by 2050 and 3 feet by 2100.
A couple things that have been alluded to this afternoon. Precipitation goes down in this area from 10 to 30%. Temperature goes up 2 to 5 degrees. And then in terms of hurricanes, the increased intensity, we're starting to see that. And I guess in terms of the frequency of hurricanes, the jury's still out. So it's more than just the sea level rise down here. When we're trying to restore the Everglades, a lot of it goes into the hydrologic equation, the water budget. And I know the South Florida Water Management District's concerned about a 10 to 30% decrease in precipitation, that input in temperature going up 2 to 5 degrees. What does that mean for the Everglades? Probably a shift, and it's been already discussed this afternoon, from the sawgrass prairie to more of a mangrove salt-dominated ecosystem. This morning I was walking around the pinelands, and there was a challenge. We've got a challenge that may in fact be inundated. Probably going to fewer alligators and more crocodiles, and there's some endangered species like the Cape Sable seaside sparrow. With some of Hal's projections, that habitat's in fact inundated. We also are looking at areas where we are subject to coastal erosion affecting turtle nesting. And also, Marguerite mentioned about Florida Bay. We've got incredible seagrass area out there. We're very concerned about increases in salinity. And there's a great publication, it's called The Unfavorable Tides by the National Wildlife Federation, Florida Wildlife Federation, that really starts to look at climate change and how it affects fishing. And if you look at what may happen out in Florida Bay, I mean, it's a premier world-class fishery out there with increased salinity, the potential for algal blooms, really some pretty significant impacts to the habitat can really change the fishery resource. We're also concerned about some of our facilities. This is Flamingo. We've got a bulkhead with 3 to 5 feet of freeboard, and then we've got over 40 backcountry chickies that we manage. Not much freeboard out there, so we're concerned about kind of our infrastructure, our facilities. In terms of hurricanes, during particularly the 2005 hurricane season, Katrina and then Wilma, some major impacts to Florida, Flamingo. We're in the process, we have a plan to rebuild Flamingo. We haven't quite figured out how to get that on a stimulus list. We've been told it's shovel-worthy, but not shovel-ready. But my point is here in hurricanes, yeah, we think the intensity may be going up, the frequency may be going down, but with that sea level rise we've been hearing about this afternoon, the storm surge, and that's really what nailed Flamingo. We have a big concern there. And then it wouldn't be an Everglades slideshow without talking a little bit about pythons, okay? People have asked me, is climate change the panacea to deal with the python problem? And I guess the word is not exactly. They do just fine in saltwater. They like warmer habitats. And these are kind of some different incidents in the park. Here's a visitor where a python just went under his vehicle and wrapped up around his engine. So now we have a special in the park, python removal and entry fee, $29.95. Okay, so, but we've got this problem with pythons, and not exactly is the answer, because if you look, this is the current distribution of pythons right now. And this is the area that's suitable based on the 2100 climate. This is a USGS map, and when I take this map up to Washington, they always want to know right here where the line is. Somewhere there. I don't know if it's right at the Potomac, I guess. And out at Fort Jefferson, I mentioned this mow wall. Marguerite talked about the bleaching. We've got the incredible tern habitat with the coastal scrub habitat. This is the mow wall out here. You know, that is our last line of defense, and we're really concerned about sea level rise. What are we going to do about all this? Well, one thing that we know we've got going for us is the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan. And the concept is if we can get more water coming down here, getting the water right, getting the habitat right, doing all this compatibility with the built environment, maybe we can get that big freshwater pulse coming down to keep that salt water at bay. And I don't know if we can build peat or not. That takes a long time, but we can at least get that hydrostatic head coming down. And we've been talking to USGS and Ronnie Best about trying to figure out what that restoration means in terms of this saltwater intrusion line. We've been looking